So what's up, guys? Ask my wedge. Are we rolling? Yeah, I think we rolling. Yeah, it's Ask My Wedge, man. How y'all doing on this new year? But I was supposed to go to the show with my son today. Actually, it didn't go through like we wanted it to. But I did want to get this note out. So I'm getting some walking in tonight. You know, ran a little bit earlier, but I'm get a little walk in tonight, and start thinking about a fighter, very important fighter, a legend who, just like many other legends nowadays, don't get a lot of credit and don't get a lot of contemplation, because a lot of these young people now, don't go that far back, because the era that I came up in with Holyfield and all that, De La Hoya, that's history for these new people nowadays. So they don't go back, as far as George Forman and Ali and all of that. So I decided to do something real quick, do a video on the second best heavyweight ever. He would have been the first best heavyweight ever. But let me tell you why Muhammad Ali called himself the greatest heavyweight ever. And why he talks so bad about this one man. He talked about a lot of people, but nobody like he shook this one man. He shook him to his core. And Ali should have been a psychologist, because what he pulled off was legendary. Because if he didn't do what he did mentally, he wouldn't have been able to beat this heavyweight. And his name is George Forman. George Forman skills was underrated, very underrated, and mainly because Muhammad Ali used to, Muhammad Ali talked about his being so wild, throwing bolo punches, and not being able to box technically, and not being able to be composed and box like a boxer like Ali. But George Foreman was underrated because of the way Ali had actually bashed him and slandered him. May God forgive Ali for any wrong. But because of Ali bashing and slandering him so hard and so intense, and he made Foreman believe that he couldn't box. When in actuality, Foreman was a brilliant boxer. And he showed that more in his later career when he came back. But his skills was very underrated as a boxer puncher. A boxer is somebody who don't rely on knockouts like Muhammad Ali, like Floyd Mayweather. These are boxers. Then you got boxer puncher, which is like a George Foreman. But George Foreman is extreme boxing puncher, the best ever, because he can punch like the punches, and he can box like the boxers. But he can mix them together, and he punched harder than any puncher. And his boxing skills are up there with the best boxers. But mentally is a lot of thing in boxing. In boxing, mental is 90%. So if your mental game is taken off, that's what Ali did. He played with him mentally. If I tell you something so much, you might start believing it. But anyway, as far as his skills. He had a jab that he used in one of his only, his jabs in one of his most celebrated and most memorable and most dominant fight he ever had is against Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier is another legend for people who know. But he outboxed Joe Frazier. He used his jab, he used his uppercut, and he used his hooks. That was a legendary performance. People underestimate too. They think he just knocked out Joe Frazier. They think he just overpowered Joe Frazier. But that's far from the truth. He confused Joe Frazier. And he jabbed Joe Frazier. And he did a lot of beautiful things. Like what he did in his later career, I'll talk about later. He did it to another fighter called Michael Moore. Same type of concept. Soft, straight punches, setting them up for the counter hooks or uppercuts. In the Frazier, he used the uppercuts. In the Michael Moore, he used the hooks. So, once again, Ali underrated him. He was a very calculating big man, and Ali knew that. In the fight with Ali, Forman was not himself. Forman was so screwed up, excuse my language, but he actually came out and started doing what Ali said he would do, loading up these big punches, and that wasn't really his character. He did punch big punches, don't get me wrong, but he also set him up with soft punches. He didn't just come out and just try to massacre people with every punch, because you're going to miss too many. And that's what, Ali made him do. And also Ali was really brilliant when it came to boxing, which he is the best boxer, heavyweight ever. He knew how to block, because boxing equals hit and not get hit. That means you must have an offense and a defense. Most fighters just have an offense, or their offense is their defense. That's not sufficient when it comes to mastering boxing art. And Muhammad Ali was a boxing master, and the best at heavyweight. George Forman was the best boxer at heavyweight, who didn't quite master boxing to the point where he just boxed, or he didn't have to just box, because he mastered punching also, where he could box and punch. So another great boxer puncher in his heyday was Mike Tyson. So some people argue about who's greater, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, George Forman, these type of things. But they don't understand is styles make fights, and you got to break it down through styles. You could say Mike Tyson in his time, in his prime, was better than Ali, because Ali didn't use his brute strength to win fights. Mike Tyson used his brute strength and boxing skills. Mike Tyson was more dimensional. George Forman used his punching power and boxing skills. But the problem is, the reason they can't say that they're better than Muhammad Ali is because Muhammad Ali was able to do it with just the boxing skills. He was that brilliant. And just like Floyd Mayweather, he's able to do it with just his boxing skills. And that's the reason boxing is still popular amongst the humane society. Because if it was all about Mike Tyson and George Forman, if they was the representatives of the best, you wouldn't get a lot of people that would like it, because they hurt people all the time. You know, but nevertheless, I don't want to get off of the subject. This is about George Forman, the second best heavyweight of all times, and the best boxer puncher of all times. Because nobody put people out and knocked them off of their feet and used their weight and their boxing ability as a boxer and a puncher better than him as a heavyweight, probably ever in any weight. Very underrated, mainly because of the slander. When he came back in his later career as an older guy, he made Ali eat his words again, because now he was older, but he still proved the point that he's a boxer. A boxer, old as he was, just being a puncher couldn't survive against somebody like Evander Holyfield, who throws rapid combinations that could hurt you. Only reason he survived is because he knew some boxing. He knew some defense. He had developed a shield like this. That was George Foreman's new blocking ability. He was a brilliant boxer. Brilliant boxer. Underrated to the core as a boxer. And I just wanted to bring this video out. I know it might not reach a lot of people. It don't mean enough. But I hope somebody with better skill than me, who could derive what I'm trying to say and bring it out in a better video. George Foreman is the most underrated heavyweight ever, and the second best heavyweight ever, because the best heavyweight ever beat him, and that was really the only person who beat him, and who would have ever beat him. If Ali wasn't around, I don't see anybody really stopping him. He lost, I think, after Ali, but before Ali, when he had his mind right, I don't see it. Mentally is 90%. Whether you're a boxer or a puncher. You know, when Mike Tyson lost his mind, he lost boxing. I think I talked about Michael Moore, Briggs. Briggs a good puncher, legendary puncher, but not great boxer at all. Not even a good boxer, but his punching was very good. He was a good puncher, and old George Foreman boxed. Boxer beats a puncher. So much love to Big George. I remember him when I was in Job Corps. I was in Red Rock Job Corps, Lopez, PA. And I used to wish I was in his Job Corps that he came up in, because they had boxing. My Job Corps didn't have boxing. It was me and a friend, Derek Felton. Derek Felton. He's from Delaware. My man. If you ever see this, Derek, man, much love, man. I remember them times we had together, man. But Derek used to teach me how to box. He taught me what his brother taught him. And I had already knew about boxing, but he taught me some things. So George Foreman was always inspiration to me. I read Joe Frazier. The first book I ever read was about Joe Louis Barrow's story. When I was a young buck, my mom moved me back to Philly and got me a library card, and that was the first book I read. And second boxing book I read was George Foreman, and I read about George Foreman in detail. So I got a lot of respect for him, and it really hurts me that nobody talks about him when they talk about legends. I don't get it. They don't know. George Foreman is the truth. All the way the truth. Second best heavyweight ever. And arguably. Well, peace.